Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Color of Money, where I, your host, Grace Coughlin, pull back the curtain on the lives and lessons learned by entrepreneurs to understand how to generate that first dollar. Today, I'm super excited to welcome Pete. He's super amazing, and let's welcome him in. Hi, Pete. How are you?
Thank you, Grace, so much for having me. It's so great to be here on Color of Money, and I'm a fan, so thank you.
It's an honor. We're so happy to have you today and, to learn a little bit more about you. Do you want to just kind of give us a 30-second little overview of who you are and what you do?
I am happy to. I started in this wonderful world of venture capital as a drummer. I was a touring rock band member, and while on tour, my band really started to explore technology, and over the years became an early and beta tester for some of the most consequential startups, anyone from an Uber to Square to Bitcoin when it was being rolled out. Fell in love with technology as a result of falling in love with the arts and music. So thrilled to be here. My 9 to 5, as they say, is as a venture capital investor. For me, this is not a job. It's not a career. It's a calling. In other words, I totally love the work that I do, and am just absolutely thrilled to be on the show. I am a partner at Alumni Ventures. Alumni Ventures is one of the most active backers of American innovation and global innovation, and based here in the Big Apple. So you'll see right next to me is the Empire State Building.
Totally. So amazing. Well, thank you so much, Pete. Again, it's an honor to have you here and can't wait to dive in some more of those things. Before we get started, just going to do a quick fast 5 to show some color into your life. So let's get started. If you were an animal, what would you be and why?
A hyrax, which is a nimble mountain-based animal.
Very specific. Okay.
I would be an outlier animal, and I'm in the business of finding outlier opportunities.
I love that. So creative. Awesome. What was the last gift you gave somebody?
I gave an ancient coin. I am a big believer in the study of history. Venture capital is all the time. It's about the future.
Yeah.
But I don't think we ground ourselves enough in the past. So I gave a very old coin to some friends.
So cool. Awesome. What is your usual breakfast order?
I'm going to go with a latte involved. That's not a specific meal. It's simply an ingredient. A latte is involved.
Got it. Interesting. Okay. If you could choose between flying and mind reading, what would you choose?
I'm going to go with flying. I've always been a big fan of zooming out.
Yeah.
And I think when you zoom out and you can go up, that gives you perspective. Mind reading is great, but there's a cost to information. You know what's on everybody's mind. In some ways, there's more cost than there is benefit.
I agree with that. Okay, and last one. What is an unpopular opinion you have?
Software is not eating the world. In my mind, at this point, software has eaten its breakfast, it's eaten its lunch, it's eaten its dinner, it's devoured industries. And therefore, we're actually at a point where software has eaten the world. Software does eat the world, but it's nimbling at this point as opposed to chomping. I believe pretty strongly that we're about to enter a new phase of the innovation cycle where software will be impactful, but it will not it will not be the primary pillar of innovation going forward. And you see this actually quite a bit at this exact particular moment, where the longest lines for employment, the longest wait lists for employment are spaces like semiconductors, and advanced manufacturing. So how's that for unpopular? I'm probably
geez, that was a great fast five. Learned so much from that. So yeah, I mean, let's just dive right into the actual, interview. I'd love to just start with talking about, you mentioned it obviously, but just this intersection between the arts and entrepreneurship, because I feel like it's a big one that, but it often goes overlooked, I feel like, to a lot of people. So can you just kind of dive in, how you got started with this? Have you always had a love for music? What was like the point where you were like, this is something that I want to dive into?
The arts, these are twins that were separated at birth. The arts and technology were twins that were separated at birth. They share the same sensibility, making something out of nothing and finding audience for that something. And the experiences that I have had, a lifetime as a drummer, as a musician, playing with other musicians, reveals how close arts and technology are. There's a joke. It's not totally a joke, but there's an observation grounded in truth. The very first cohort to adopt new technology are criminals. Criminals are oftentimes the very, very first group to experiment, explore new technology. It was true of the internet. It was true certainly of Web3, and true of many other aspects of life. The second cohort to adopt new technology are artists. Why? Because we share two things with criminals. First is a desire to make money when it's otherwise hard to come by. It's hard to come by. It's hard to come by revenue in the arts. The second thing that we have in common, which is really important, is we have a tolerance, a willingness, an openness to try things immediately and without too much consideration. Compare a drummer to a doctor. Compare a drummer to a lawyer. A lawyer has many more considerations. Compare them to a doctor. A doctor has many more considerations. The patient, compliance. But a drummer, like any artist, doesn't really have too many overlords, too many people that are overseeing them or going to slap their hand if they do something wrong. So the arts are one of the very, very first sectors, areas of life to explore new technology. And I think this is proven time and time again. You can go back to the original digital transformation powered by the internet. The very first sectors to be broadly disrupted were music, entertainment. Companies like the very first digital distribution companies like Napster, one example. The very first generative AI use cases. Production music, 6, 7, 8 years ago. So the arts ends up being a beachhead for a lot of innovation and use cases.
Totally. No, that's amazing. Thank you for kind of just diving in deeper with that, because I feel like there is such an intersection between both these things, but a lot of people don't seem to realize that. I feel like it's not a very common thing for people to know about. So that's great. Do you want to talk a little bit about what got you into that? How you kind of first started? Was it always a passion you had?
Yeah. So Grace, I'll tell you two inflection moments. One, how I got started as a drummer, and then two, how I got started as a venture capitalist.
Great.
I got started as a drummer. I have a twin brother. My grandmother showed up one day when I was 8 years old with a drum set and said, "Hey, Pete, hey, Teddy, here's a drum set. next Friday. It was
Play.
8 p.m. and there was the very first auditions for the school orchestra.
Wow.
And because it was 8 a.m. on a Friday, when one twin wakes up early and the other one sleeps in, one of us missed the first drum rehearsal and the other one made it. And let's put it this way, I like to wake up early. So
Yep. There you go.
Drums, that's how I got started by drums, serendipity. Yep. How I got started in venture, also serendipity. As I said, as an artist, obsessive about technology, I was always game, down for, open to testing new technologies.
Got it.
My band really was in the heyday of our touring. We had startups reach out to us all the time and say, hey, Filiger, you want to try out this technology? We think what you're doing is cool. You probably have a use case. Yeah. When they were 20 people and they were in their second market, and when they were looking for use cases for their technology, we got a note from a startup that said, hey, you have fans that go to shows. Yeah. We have technology that takes people from point A to point B with like a VIP limo experience. Can you help promote our app called Uber Taxi? No one knows who we are. And we did a small promotion and partnership with Uber when they were really getting started. This time and time again, pattern happened. Technology reaches out, artists, we say yes. So we were a very early user for Square because Square had the card readers that would plug right into your phone, their mobile workforce. So we would use the fintech when we were going to shows where we would take a card, it's supposed to cash. So that story continued with me for my entire life. So I started drums with serendipity. I entered into venture through serendipity as well, but throughout always a cohesion of creativity and entrepreneurship.
Totally. And it's so amazing that you got to do both. You know, I would like, obviously you have something that you're super passionate about, but it also just sounds like you love the venture capital, you know, like that's not just like your 9 to 5, you know, boring, like get me out of here. I want to go play the drums. You know, it sounds like both are things that you really enjoy. And I just think that that's so amazing that you get to do both.
Grace, absolutely. For me, venture, it's not a job. It's not a career. It's a calling. And it is also a calling because I love history. And
totally.
Look at the story about the coin. I look back as much as I look forward. My job is as much about having a foundational understanding of the past as it is a predictive sense of the future. And that's why I also absolutely love this, because I know that innovation is a pillar of development, and that's electrifying.
Totally. It's just so interesting because, you know, I ask a lot of people this, like, if they believe that, you know, like the work-life balance is kind of achievable, if it's possible to have both. So I'm just interested to see, since you know, you kind of have like two kind of separate work lives, if it's difficult for you to kind of have that balance with your personal life as well, if it's even more challenging, just given how many things you're doing, or if you feel like that's attainable in your life.
One thing you find in the world of innovation is that for many, especially for entrepreneurs, work and life is blurred. Because there's a passion, in some cases an addictive passion, to building. And so I have these things blur all the time. For me, yesterday I brought my drums to work because right after I played the New York Halloween parade.
Awesome.
With my Brazilian drumming group. And that in a literal sense, I always carry my the personal and professional alongside of each other. I will say at some point everyone, maybe Grace, you've had this, although you've got some years ahead of you, though certainly many, many peers have had this, where you feel like the passions you develop as a young person need to be abandoned or need to be put to the back burner because life comes at you hard.
Right.
There was a long period where I thought, oh, well, maybe I needed to let my creative DNA like slow down so that I could be more of a workplace person. I found that when I let the very best of me shine, it's when I'm mixing up in the soundboard my creative and music background and kind of keeping the professional work side where it is. So that's just another way of saying I try to let these shine and I don't hide behind it. And it's actually rewarded in my world where a lot of founders, a lot of entrepreneurs, they are polymaths. This big word that means they have many different interests and pursuits.
Yep. Yeah, totally. Do you feel like there was ever a time where you kind of had to convince the people in your life that you should keep going with your creative side, like that you could do both? Were they kind of like, no, like you said, like it's time to grow out of that? Do you feel like you had to, convince your supporters to follow you and go with you?
I'm a big fan of show, don't tell. So
totally agreed.
You can feel like you need to talk that talking point with others when it comes up.
Yeah.
With peers, they ask you, oh, how do you do both? How do you manage to do drumming and venture and foreign policy? How do you do all this?
Yeah.
Embedded is skepticism in their question rather than wax poetic and try to tell them, oh, I can do it. I just do it. So I do the job, a job of a venture capitalist well. I do the job of a drummer well, and the job of a civic-minded individual reasonably well too. And so I'm a big fan of like show, don't tell.
I totally agree with that. And at the end of the day, you're your biggest supporter and you know yourself the best. So you kind of just got to make those decisions for yourself, kind of no matter what anyone says.
Be true to yourself and you will never be false to anyone. That's a big thing.
That.
Know thyself and the rest will shine.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's amazing. And do you want to talk just a little bit maybe about like the other members in your band? Do you feel like they've been really great supporters with you and people that you really feel like you can lean on?
The most important thing you can do in life is surround yourself with people that share the same values, and the rest will follow from there. So I've been fortunate both with my creative partners and professional partners that there's a shared, if you will, infrastructure layer of values, and the rest of the things you build on top of it, the software, the top of the stack, applications, blah, 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 that you can have a lot more variance and a lot more heterogeneity, difference, pluralism on top, as long as you kind of share those same values. So I feel absolutely been blessed to have that, but it's also a decision that you make. Who do you want to be around? And that's something that I've found that if you share values, there's encouragement, there's having each other's back, there's conviction, there's comfort.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I feel like it's always great to have supporters and people that are in your corner who kind of have the same beliefs as you and can support what you're doing. And not only do you have one, but you have two, which is just twice as good. So that's amazing. Is there one person that you feel like has really been a mentor to you over the years? or has it kind of been like a bunch of people?
When you're a drummer, you always get the question, hey, which drummers do you like most?
Yeah.
And there's two types of drummers. One drummer is going to give you a list of 20 drummers from different eras and styles, and they're going to talk about the intricacies of each of their playing and the tracks that they like.
Totally.
And then there's the drummer. There's the drummers who kind of just say, well, I like this genre or that genre. They don't give you specifics. I'm somewhere in between those. But my greatest inspirations, my greatest mentors have been my teachers.
Yeah.
And you will never know their name necessarily, but they have been the most impactful for me. That is true in music for me. That is true in academics for me. That's true in venture for me. The most impactful people have been those that have generously shared their time to back me behind the way. So it's not so much an individual. It's more of a spiritual support that I've collectively been given by teachers.
Totally. That's amazing. I feel like that, one-on-one time where people who have done this before you and can really just like share their experiences. I mean, this is why like I'm doing this, it's called like everyone that I'm kind of talking to, my mentors sort of, because I'm just learning so much from you guys because you've done it, you're living it right now. And as someone who's 18, who's trying to get, all into that by starting a startup and moving across the country by herself. Like, it's just so inspiring to hear all these different stories from people. So I totally,
I admire you and I'm inspired by you, and in that you are doing what must be done to go from 0 to 1, to go from 1 to 100. Throw yourself in the deep end. You have thrown yourself in the deep end. And the most celebrated moments of my life have been when I also threw myself completely in the deep end. So I congratulate you too in doing that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, you kind of just, I've had a passion for this, and I feel like when you have a passion and you have the people to back you, why not go for it? I'm young. I can make mistakes. It's okay. Just dive in, like you said, jumping right in the deep end, see what happens. Totally. You want to share? Oh, yeah, go ahead.
I'm telling my future self right now, Pete, remember this interview with Grace, because when Grace is the star, you are thinking to yourself, she's going to be a star. So I'm having my venture mindset of looking at the future and knowing that this is going to be a special artifact in history.
Thank you. Thank you. That means a lot. No, you never know what could happen. Do you maybe want to share like a moment where you were doubting yourself in what you were doing and you didn't know if it was necessarily going to work out, a big like failure that you might have had, but how you kind of pushed through that?
Yeah. When you're in the arts, failure is not an exception. It's the status quo. You're always finding yourselves in embarrassing or suboptimal environments. I mean, one time my band played a show in Delaware, and we had a cancellation and had to go to another venue very, very last minute. And when we took the stage, there was quite a few people in the room, but they were there for the band prior. When the band prior left, the fans left. When we started to play, there was only one person in the entire venue, and that was the bartender. There was only one person, but actually there was two living things in the audience. There was the bartender and her dog. When the bartender went out for a smoke break, we as a quartet, typically playing huge venues to big crowds. We were playing to just one dog, a little dog in a dive bar in Delaware. And there's ever a moment that saps out all energy and conviction and charisma, it's playing to a beagle in Wilmington, Delaware on a weekday. That questions, that calls you to question a lot of things. But you know, that is an experience that every founder has had.
Totally.
The moment where you, in this startup journey where you've had the ups and the downs, there's the valley of despair. This is like the canyon in that valley of despair where you really question everything.
Right.
You know, that's what gives you resilience. That's what gives you fortitude. And that's what gives you credibility. Because actually, founders, they don't look to partner just with the person that sold their company for 100 times entry point. They want to partner with the person that has empathy and understanding for the journey.
Totally. Yeah. I agree. It's the people that make it, I feel like, are the ones that persevere through the tough times, because it just makes them stronger in the end. Yep. I totally agree. So kind of just to wrap things up, I would just love to ask if you have any advice for, you know, young people, I'm 18, just for who are kind of starting out or want to make that jump into doing something like this, but don't know if they should. Just any advice that you would give people?
It's impossible if you don't try.
Mm-hmm.
It's impossible if you don't try.
Yeah.
And this is one of the hardest things of hard things to accept, that unless you at some point decide to give it a shot, it will otherwise never happen.
Right.
I'm from Chicago. I grew up during the time where the Chicago Bulls were a dynasty team led by Michael Jordan. And there's a great story from Michael Jordan's own past where he got cut from his high school basketball team and didn't make the high school team. But he really stuck with the thing and kept with it, made the team, and the rest is history.
Right.
We all have our own like that, where we're told by the world that you can't do what you want to do. Even credible people, some you might consider mentors, tell you that it's not even uphill, it's a wall. You've hit a wall and there's no way to get over it. But it's impossible if you don't try. It's impossible to get over a big wall if you don't try. There is some probability of you getting over it just by tapping and tapping, and being persistent over time. So that's my primary advice.
That's awesome. No, thank you. I totally agree with that, and I take that to heart deeply. So thank you so much. And
the flip side quickly is my best advice sometimes is don't listen to advice. Because a lot of people will, advice is actually an ego building opportunity. When Grace asks Pete for advice, well, Pete's just going to tell you how the way the world works, and what the magic wand is. So if you are given advice and someone tells you to do something that's exactly what they did, don't weight it as heavily as advice when someone tells you to do something that they did not do. That did it differently, because it's actually requires more of an ego trade-off. It's more ego bruising to say Pete actually did things really wrong. You should do it the other way. Don't do what Pete did. So if someone says advice that's don't do what I did, listen. If someone says do advice that exactly as I did it, don't listen to that advice.
Got it. You know, that's gonna make a mental note of that. And for anyone tuning in, you heard it here first. So no, that's great. Pete, thank you so much for coming on today. It was such a pleasure to talk to you and just learn so much about you. It's been amazing.
Grace, thank you so much for having me, and to your wonderful audience too. Do not hesitate to reach out to me if I can be helpful. I have a LinkedIn, obviously, but I also have a cool TikTok called Pete the Beat, where I talk about trends in technology while playing the drums. So check it out at Future Beat on TikTok.
Got it. Well, you heard it here. We'll see what happens. Thank you so much again, Pete.
Thank you, Grace, for having me.